Oh, it says an error occurred. Wait a moment to try again. What does that mean? I'm going to try again.
It says we're live.
Oh, says we're live. Says we are live. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I got a little error message on my end, but apparently it wasn't real. Welcome to the Friday Frontliner series here on A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle Lowrance, and I'm popping back on the Blaze today for this interview. I am the former host of Authors of Bookstores, which is a show that broadcast on the Blaze for about 4 years. And from time to time, I have the pleasure of coming back for a special interview like today's. And I'm really happy that you're joining us. Oh, and I should also say, I am the author of the forthcoming novel, What Remains of You, which will be coming out in June 2026. That is the first time I've actually introduced myself like that. It's very exciting. And I am joined today by my friend, Donna Freitas, who I'm so excited to interview again. I had Donna on the Blaze back in 2021 to talk about the 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano. And today we are going to be talking about her new novel, Her One Regret. Before I jump in and introduce you to Donna, I wanted to let you know, if you're watching live with us, welcome. And we'd love to hear your questions. Please put them below in a comment, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll try to get to as many as we can later on in the broadcast. Okay, so let me tell you about Donna. Donna Freitas is the author of a number of award-winning, critically acclaimed books, including, as I mentioned, The 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano, which was published in 20 languages, the memoirs Consent and Wishful Thinking, and over a dozen novels for children and young adults. She has a PhD in gender studies and religion and teaches creative writing. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Sunday Times, and many other outlets. She's also been interviewed on the Today Show, CNN, and All Things Considered. A native Rhode Islander, Donna splits her time between the US and Barcelona. And once again, today we'll be discussing her brand new novel, which came out on November 4th, Her One Regret. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here talking to you, Kimberly. So thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us. And we should say that you are joining us from Barcelona, and none of us are jealous. We're not jealous at all.
It is pretty. Look, it's nighttime though. You can sort of see night falling behind me. So at least you're during the day. It's coffee time.
It sounds divine. Your book has had a lot of wonderful buzz. It was a November Book of the Month Club pick, which is fantastic. And the reviews have been terrific. Kirkus calls it a satisfying page turner. Shelf Awareness says this is a dynamic mystery that is also a rousing conversation starter about an experience of motherhood still treated as a taboo. Publishers Weekly calls the book riveting. Library Journal gave you a starred review and called Her One Regret a gripping suspense novel with provocative social commentary. It's an emotional roller coaster. And the review went on to say the book is sure to appeal to book groups and calls it an emotionally charged feminist thriller that holds up a mirror to impossible expectations placed on women, inspiring necessary conversations about choice and regret. Now that the book so good. Now that the book is out in the world, can you talk to us a little bit about its reception, how you're feeling about it being embraced by so many readers, and then also can you give us a little explanation what the book is about?
Sure. I'll tell you what the book is about first. So it starts with a baby alone in a parking lot, and all these women come out of a supermarket and they find the baby in a shopping cart, but they can't find the mother. And so we know that the mother is missing. And so a big search ensues. The police are called. And so it makes national news very quickly because she's this beautiful young mother. And what we know very quickly is that the best friend, who's one of the protagonists, has a secret. And the secret is that her friend just recently confessed to her that she regretted having a baby and that she was fantasizing about planning her own disappearance. And so really the book turns on this question of was she taken or did she run? And there's 3 protagonists. There's the best friend, Michelle, there is a retired detective named Diana who gets involved in the case. And then there's a woman from the town who doesn't know Lucy, that's the woman who disappears, or Michelle, the best friend, but she becomes obsessed with Lucy's disappearance. And she's at home with a newborn herself. So she begins to identify with Lucy. But part of her obsession is that she also becomes convinced that her neighbor is holding Lucy in his basement. And so the book kind of goes from there, and you have to just kind of go in and see what happens, and you really don't know until the very end.
I read this book in like a delicious devouring, like one of those, give me the book, don't talk to me, I'm sitting in this chair just gulping it all down. And I was so I just love the way you wove together this mystery. Where is Lucy? What's happened to her? And use that to examine a very complicated, emotional, difficult topic about motherhood. And I wondered, how did you come to that pairing of a really rich, important topic against the backdrop of this page turner? Oh my God, what's happening? Is she in the basement? Is that guy scary? That whole sort of must turn the page, must not eat, must not talk to anyone feeling for the reader.
Well, I guess, I knew for my next book, after I wrote 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano, I knew pretty quickly I was going to write about motherhood regret. I have it too. I have the paperback.
I love this book so much.
I think the paperback is pretty cheap. I love the hardcover. Yeah. So I kind of think of this book as the 10th Rose, because Rose is about 9 different versions of a woman's life that turn on whether or not she has a baby and all the outcomes based on that decision. And the version of Rose I didn't write in that book was the one where she regrets her baby as one of the outcomes, because I thought we weren't allowed to talk about that. And it was my greatest fear about having a child. And so I used to worry about that. I used to stay up at night thinking about it. And after Rose came out, I got many letters from women asking me why there wasn't a version of Rose where she regretted her baby. So I knew, I was like, okay, Donna Freitas, you have to do this. You have to take up this topic. It's something I wanted to do for Rose and just didn't. And so, but I also I think I was reading a lot of mystery and crime novels at the time, because I really love reading mystery and crime novels. But I also thought, what would allow us into this topic, really into it, really sort of fleshing out the taboo of it, I guess, and all the judgment that comes pouring out, I think, about mothers in general, regardless of whether or not they regret. I feel like women are damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Mothers are damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. No matter what they say, I think we judge them. And so I thought, what would happen if we get the whole world talking about this one woman, with sympathy, because we think she's been taken, but then also this question comes up of maybe she wasn't taken after all, and she actually ran. Yeah. And how would the conversation change? And so I really felt like the disappearance itself would push the issue in a way that was really potent, and that would kind of rip it open. And so that's what I decided. Right away for me, this was going to have to be a thriller. And it was just going to be a thriller about motherhood. I remember I was like, oh, I'm writing a thriller about motherhood.
I really was, I loved it, of course, as I said, gulping it down. And what I always think is the best compliment for a book is that I keep thinking about it, and I engaged in conversation with other people about it. So I was having this conversation with my best friend last night, for example, and we were talking about motherhood. And I asked her, do we have any friends who regretted having children? And so we had this whole conversation about it that I've never had with her before. I've never had with any woman before. So I found that to be, when the reviews talk about how this is a great book club conversation, it's also just a great conversation starter to have with friends, opening the door to a dialogue that perhaps we'd never had before. And yeah, go ahead.
No, you go. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just curious if you're hearing that from readers, if you're hearing people say like, oh, this really inspired me to have a conversation with a sister or a friend or a daughter or a niece, someone who I was afraid was struggling. And maybe this book was a way to wedge open the door to a topic that perhaps before had never been discussed.
I definitely, when I was writing the book, some of my friends were saying like, I can't wait till this book comes out because there are so many women that I really want to read this book that I think will relate to it. And I think I've definitely had so many readers already writing to me about how relieved they are to see this on the page and how this is such a taboo topic, yet we should be talking about it. Why don't we talk about it more? Why did it take so long for someone to write about this? Which has been so heartening for me, because it's also, I feel like this book, like writing this book and letting it out into the world has been this huge leap of faith. I mean, my editor and I talked, she was like, Donna, she was like, you're going to get 5-star reviews, and you're going to get 1-star reviews, and you just have to be ready. She was like, because there are going to be people who are really upset that this book exists. And then there are going to be people who are really grateful that this book exists, but people are going to take sides. And so you just have to be okay with that. And so I've been prepared for that, but there was this one post someone did in response to after reading the book, and I don't know how they did it. Maybe it was a reel. You know that I'm not good at social media, but it was like, it had a picture of the book, and then as you looked at it, it was square. I don't think it was a story. So maybe it was real. I don't know. But there were words that just kept popping up and disappearing.
Yeah.
And it was like empathy, and one of them was compassion, like all the emotions they felt while they were reading the book and like witnessed. And I was just like, oh, this is everything I could have dreamed of in terms of a reader response. And so I'm glad that women are feeling seen by it. And I'm glad people, like, it's allowing people to talk about this topic. Yeah. So that feels exciting to me. I feel like I write about all these controversial topics. And so here I go again, and I'm in one. So.
Well, it's controversial in the sense that it's not typically discussed. Like, talking about how we feel about motherhood should not be controversial, right? It's just this society has this depiction of motherhood as like, soft light and, chubby little well-behaved babies, but they're messy and you don't sleep and your body hurts, and then they become adolescents and they argue with you, and then there's teenagers and they never want to see you. So it's like all the stages of motherhood can be rewarding and also incredibly challenging, but we really seem to only discuss the sort of positive parts of it. And maybe that's self-preservation, but you could also talk about that being a way to like keep women in a box and not let them explore all the facets of who they can become. I don't know. One of the things I thought you did really, there are many things you did very well in this book, but one thing I really appreciated as a mother is the way that you depict many different kinds of motherhood and many different kinds of mothers. So there's Michelle, the best friend of Lucy, who loves her children like so much and finds such great fulfillment out of motherhood. But as the book progresses, you see her also question a lot of the habits that she and her husband have fallen into around caregiving. She never questions being a mother, more the sort of expectations that have been placed on her and the limitations. And then you have Diana, the detective, who is a mother of she's a grandmother, right? She's a much older mother, and she's so compassionate, right? She has so much, at least that's how I read her, to be someone who's so empathetic. And then you have Julia, who's like in the thick of it with a newborn and like everything. It's just so exhausting. And so I felt like all of these different kinds of responses to motherhood and different stages gave the story so much authenticity. Like as a reader, I could find myself in all of these stories. I could find myself in the new mother. Like, I remember that phase. And I could find myself in the mother who fiercely loves her children. I could find myself in the older mother who looks at younger mothers with compassion. I thought that the way you had all of these different kinds of mothers is probably why that reader used the word compassion and empathy, because I felt like the book had so much respect and love and grace for women.
Oh, that makes me really happy to hear you say. I think what was really important to me, I knew I was going to write about this really complicated, taboo topic in many ways about motherhood. But I wanted to, like, this is not about this. I mean, this is not about disrespecting motherhood as, as an identity and as a way of being and something that you do in life. Like, I really wanted motherhood to be respected.
Yeah.
In the book. And I also have so many wonderful mothers in my life. I had a wonderful mother myself. I had the best grandma ever. And I also feel like we don't often portray grandmothers in a lot of these books, I think. And so I really liked having an older character. So Diana, the retired detective's in her like early 70s. And she's actually married to a woman who also has kids. So they have this blended family. And like Diana adores her daughter and they're like always talking on the phone and they have this really good relationship. And so I feel like there's a way in which I wanted to portray motherhood in its many different forms. One of which is motherhood is not for me.
Yeah.
And so, there are mothers who like this is the goal and fulfillment of their life and they just truly love it. There are mothers who think it's all they want and then they become one and they realize it's not for them.
Yeah.
And then there are also these different stages where, when your kids are really young, there's a way it's so hard, but then when they're older, it can be really exciting and fun and wonderful. And when they're getting married, you can enjoy things in a different way. And so there's so many different stages and you may love one more than another. And I sort of wanted all things to be on the table, including the one where, you realize this wasn't for me. And I think lots of men, we don't condemn men when they walk away or when they're just like, yeah, this wasn't for me. We kind of expect it from them, but we condemn women. We don't allow it even to come out of their mouths. And so I think that's one of the things for me, one of the things that was really important to be able to speak out loud in the book or have the characters speak out loud was just the word regret and have it sit there.
Yeah.
Because we generally undo it when people say it. We're like, you don't mean that. That's what we say. But some people do mean it.
Yeah. And that's something you depict in the book is Lucy talking about these feelings of regret and Michelle, her friend who loves her, almost, brushing it away. Like, oh, that's not how you feel. And that felt so true to life. And it's done with love, but it's also trying to be supportive and not realizing that sometimes in our efforts to be supportive, we can actually shut someone down from having the conversation that they need to have. So I was glad to see that on the page as well. And I have to say, one of my favorite things about the book is the relationship between Michelle and Lucy. I love their friendship. I thought that we're talking a lot about motherhood, but another beautiful part of the book is the way you depict female friendship. And there's this great line from the book I wanted to read. It's on page 46 for everyone who has the book in front of them. And Michelle, I think it's Michelle talking about her friendship with Lucy. And it's the best kind of love story between women friends, the kind that surpasses all other types of love because it will endure even the darkest and most shocking of confessions, the most scandalous of whispered truths. And I think I've been thinking a lot about the kind of life-giving friendships we have as women and how critical they are to survive motherhood, marriage, death, happiness, like all the parts of life that we experience, and how having strong female friendships can sustain us. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about why that was important to build in the book and how you approach that.
Well, I've thought a lot too about how this is a friendship story too. This is about how women go to bat for each other. That's definitely in this book, both with Julia, who doesn't know Lucy, who takes it upon herself. Like she's really worried about Lucy and is basically trying to find her. But this is also just really about like Michelle, come hell or high water, is loyal to her friend and is going to defend her to her very last breath. And, I think as someone who has been through a divorce, I feel like often my women friends have survived my divorce, like they have been so enduring, like they've survived the death of both my parents. I've had my friends have gotten me through so much. I was actually just with a friend of mine today for lunch who lives in Barcelona. We went to college together. It's wonderful that we both ended up living in Barcelona. And we were talking about how like we were part of each other's found family, that there's family that's blood, and then there's the families that we find. And so we were saying that to each other, like we were family for each other, because we, in many ways, are both alone in the world when it comes to family. Like we've both lost our families. And so for me, I really have survived so much on the love of the people around me who have chosen me, like to be in their life. And I feel like I have also chosen them. And so I think that's also a feature in the 9 Lives too. Friendship is a big part of that book, but it's really at the heart of this book too. And it makes me happy to hear you say that you saw that this is about motherhood. This is about a disappearance. This is a mystery. This is about motherhood, this taboo, and it's also about friendship, because I think that's true.
And I'm not going to have any spoilers, but that's my goal, is not to give any spoilers away. But we could say that Lucy's friendship with Michelle is what ultimately saves her. Michelle's like complete belief in her friend and complete love for her friend is in the end what offers her safety. And then I'm trying to craft that sentence.
There are many women in the book who go to bat for Lucy.
Yeah. Yes.
Someone actually, there's a Facebook group for the Book of the Month Club. I think there's probably a bunch of them, but there's one of them, there's like 2,000 people, and I guess they do like a syllabus and they read along over the course of weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so they're sending me questions, and I'm going to send them answers over video. And one of the questions I got, and I was like, what's going on with all the men in the book? So, because it's true that in some ways, much like in the 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano, also the men in the book, the male characters that I've written, not all of them, but are challenges to the women. They are definitely provide more hurdles than helps, I guess, in the story. And so I was thinking about how, like what's going on there with me and men and my stories. But I do think that I have seen in my life, and then I also came from a situation previously where I just felt like everyone around me is saying that they're a feminist. Like all the men around me are saying that they're feminists, but they're not behaving like feminists. And I feel like this is something that I see a lot in my life and around me. And then you have a lot of women taking a lot onto themselves on top of all the work that they're doing, like all the domestic labor, all the professional work that they're doing, and all the child rearing.
Yeah, the men in this book are not helpful always to the women in their lives. And I don't think it's a book that's anti-male. I think it's a book that depicts how life-changing motherhood is for women and how sometimes this is my opinion, of course, how sometimes the men in their lives do not see the depths of that change,
Mhm.
um, and don't grow with their partners. Like, like I feel like the best possible father partner is someone who can see, oh, this is not just a baby. Now we have another person in our family, but this is a profound seismic change in our lives, both of our lives, and I need to grow too. And it just seems like some of these husbands in this book are not really able to do that.
Well, I think about, I don't know if you've read, I know you know Molly Millwood from
Mhm.
our writing group, but she's a specialist. She's a psychologist, and her specialty is postpartum depression. And she wrote this book, To Have and to Hold: Motherhood, Marriage, and the Modern Dilemma. And it's about what women go through and what couples go through after having a child. And she writes personally about her own experiences in addition to what she talks about as a therapist. But I remember talking to Molly when she was going through this, but also in the book she talks about how so her first baby was really colicky.
Mm.
And so, and she, like, her whole life just became about somehow calming the baby down and getting him asleep. And so
Mhm.
she knew, like, every creak on every stair
Yep.
and every floorboard in her house, because she was so terrified once the baby got to sleep that the baby would wake up. And she was so attuned to everything around the baby. And then she talked about how her husband, who's a great dad, he's really amazing, was like an elephant around the house and just would just tumble down the stairs after she'd just gotten the baby to sleep. And she was just like, how can you not understand? Like, and so she talks about how there's
Yeah.
this, she experienced this incredible gulf. When she was so attuned to everything about the baby, and her husband just wasn't.
Yeah.
And she was like, how do we cross this gulf? Like, how do we get through this? And that first year after you have a baby is so hard. And it's so easy for couples to struggle
Yeah.
because of the different experiences women and men have in relation. So, but she always, like, I think about, it's funny because we just saw them a couple of weeks ago, and I will always sort of think about Ari as like the elephant in the house because of that, because he is a little bit of an elephant. And I can imagine if you have a baby,
Yeah.
it's not ideal.
And this is woven into the book, this idea of like, there's at least one husband in particular is not able to see his wife's experience at all, and does just like can't understand her efforts she's trying to ask for help, and he's just not really seeing that at all. And I think, so the book to me also feels very grounded in it feels very grounded in truth. And for all these stories referencing Molly's work, but then also you have a character in the book Melody Cho, who is based on a real life parenting expert, Emily
Yeah.
Oster. And Emily Oster is a professor at Brown, an economist, and we'll put a link to her website below. But the Melody Cho character rather is someone who is an expert on parenting and who becomes embroiled in the plot in a positive way. And there's there's a letter, it's on page, again, 194, for everyone who has to compare them. And it's an article that Melody writes, and she talks about how is there a limitation on the range of emotions mothers are permitted to feel? Do we believe that regret is outside the purview of a mother's experience? And so she tries to give context to Lucy's feelings and thoughts about motherhood. And I and I and you if the book to me feels very grounded in research, and that shouldn't be surprised because of your background in the research field. But I was curious, why was it important to you to have a character in the book who was a parenting expert and who could bring a data-driven perspective to the dilemma the characters are going through?
Well, I mean, I think this is such a taboo topic, and part of how I set things up, I think when there is a disappearance, especially one that makes news, right? We become obsessed, I think, often with we become obsessed with women who disappear in our culture. And so part of what happens when that obsession occurs and we become like, what's going to happen to the story? Will she be alive? Will she be dead? Will we ever find her? When are we going to find her? What will she have gone through if we do find her? So when you have that obsession and then you add this really juicy, taboo possibility to the mix, I just thought like this will become like in real life, like this would become a national conversation and everybody would be weighing in and giving their opinions, not just about a disappearance, but also just judging the woman who's disappeared because of a feeling that she admitted privately to her friend. And so I wanted, like, I knew that there'd be pundits that would be talking about it. And, you know, I wanted there to be a forum for someone who knows what she's talking about, you know, in this area, who's like, this is what she does. Like, she writes about being a mother and everything about motherhood and everything you need to know about it. And she would be kind of convening a conversation that would be happening alongside all the pundits who would be worrying and largely judging Lucy, I think. And so I really wanted, I wanted there to be someone leading a bigger, more important conversation at the center, at the heart of the book. And so it felt like there's going to be a national conversation, you know, because the topic is so juicy and we can't resist it because we don't like it and we love to judge women. And, you know, we can have this person like an Emily Oster who joins the conversation and becomes really important to it.
Yeah. And you brought up the pundits and the judging, and there's a thread in this whole book about social media and about the news media and how people glom on to the facts they believe they know about Lucy and spin it into a lot of judgment. And that also felt so true to me about how quick we are online to eviscerate people because of our preconceived notions, because of like this one thing we read, and how society right now doesn't really allow for nuanced conversations or difficult conversations to be had in a thoughtful way. And that's done really well in the book. And I think what I took away from it was the pain that causes the people who love the subject, you know, in this case, Lucy, like how much pain her family goes through and her friends. And I wondered if there was like an inspiration for that. Like, was there a real life story that hooked you, like, oh, I have to make sure this is played out on a international stage like this? Or is it just kind of like what's expected nowadays with social media? So can you talk a little bit about how that storyline got woven in?
I guess I'm interested. I've always been interested in the way that we try some people in the press, like what it means to try someone in the press. And just how quick we are to do it now. I think it feels really frightening to me. And like what is going on inside of us that we want to do this, that we want to all just kind of jump to conclusions about someone and decide that it's on us to weigh in on moments that are some of the most painful in people's lives. Why do we think it's okay to do that? But also, like, it's just such a common thing now, more common than ever. And I know this is going to sound like a strange, old reference, but I think I will think about Monica Lewinsky for the rest of my life.
Right.
As someone everybody just went to town on, this young woman, like this young woman.
Yeah.
And, you know, people made fun of her. I made fun of her. Like it was just what you did. And I think about how many years it took, decades, for us to acknowledge that
Yeah.
that was wrong.
So
That, like,
wrong.
it was so wrong. And
So wrong.
when there have been, like, more recently in the last few years, when there have been these positive articles about her and just like she's talking about what her life has been like, and I feel like she finally has this voice in the way that she didn't back then, and she didn't for like 2 decades. And I feel glad that things have turned around for her, but also sick to my stomach at what we all put her through for
Yeah.
so many years, like the humiliation and all of that. And I think I will think about her forever. Like I just feel like we were all wrong. And so I don't know. That's a situation that I've sort of carried around. I think I feel guilt about it myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I was the kid when she was a kid, and so like how could adults, how could we all ask her to bear that? And so I'm very interested, not just because of that situation, but just in general, the way that we think it's okay to burden people in this way, or to sort of enter their lives and destroy them in so many ways. So I
please
I
continue.
wanted to play that out in the book.
Yeah, it does become almost sport for people, right? The sort of attacking and tearing down of another person. And I always think about that when my kids would have arguments with friends, like on the playground or something, or someone was mean to them. We would always talk about, well, why do you think that person's doing it? And it's like, well, that person's probably in pain about something else. And for that brief shining moment, they feel better, making you feel small. And it's always surprising to me that these lessons of the playground don't translate into adults. And that we still, like, we behave so cruelly to other people. And and I think that was done really well in the book. So
I'm glad. I mean, I think we definitely need more forgiveness. God forbid we make a mistake. And I think forgiveness is a value and a topic we maybe don't talk about enough. And that's definitely something. I guess one of the questions I had going into this book was, will people be able to forgive Lucy? And I don't know, like, will people be able to forgive Lucy regardless of what happens to her? Will they forgive her for having that thought? And I think some people maybe won't, and some people I hope will.
It's such an interesting question. I don't know that reading the book, I don't know that she needed forgiveness. I mean, I feel like this is just from my 2 cents, 5 cents. And we don't have pennies anymore, so I guess I can't say 2 cents. Or from my dime, a quarter, whatever. I felt that her feeling in that moment, maybe I regret this, deserved compassion. Like, that for me is a sign that someone's struggling and they need support. I don't know. I don't know that, like, do I need to forgive her for thinking that? I don't know. Like, I don't know that that's like, I don't know. I don't know that that's like as necessary as letting them have the space to work through what it is that they're struggling with.
I think that question for me comes from my own experience of knowing that I didn't want children. And feeling very unforgiven for it. And when I went into writing The 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano, which is about the question of whether or not to have a baby, and it's about a woman who doesn't want one, I remember knowing that there are people who won't forgive Rose for not wanting a baby, because there are so many people who wouldn't forgive me for not wanting a baby. And in some ways, I remember thinking when I was writing that book, this is me asking for forgiveness for being the person that I am. And I think that's part of where that question comes from Lucy, because I think I know all too well what it's like to not be forgiven for being a woman like myself. And I think there are people who find it unforgivable to even have the thought that Lucy has.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I guess I am interested in general
Yeah.
in the ways that we can be so unforgiving of each other, but especially unforgiving of women.
Yeah, that's totally true that we are unforgiving of one another. Absolutely, in so many ways. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that that was your experience, that I will never understand the way that we make other people feel uncomfortable with their own beings and their own choices. Like,
It's nice to be on the other side of it. Because
yeah,
on the other side of it, I'm in Barcelona.
you're in Barcelona and you're writing these books that are engaging people in these conversations and these thoughts. And I was at your book launch in Rhode Island, and one of the things we talked about with the audience was this need when you were a younger woman facing this question of whether or not to have a child, and you wish that there had been someone to say, it's okay that you don't want to do this. Like, that's of course an option you could have. And so you're writing these books where women can have, who maybe can't bring up the conversation alone, have a tool to share with someone they love to perhaps open the door.
I hope that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of us writing books in so many. Well, there's so many points to writing books, but I do think that stories allow us to talk about the unspeakable.
Yeah.
And often the best way to speak the unspeakable is to do it through the characters that we create and the stories we hand to them. And as we watch them live out their own choices. And I think fiction really opens the door to talking about a lot of hard things. And I hope that they're also just fun books to read, even as they talk about they open up lots of complicated issues. I love naughty things. Like speaking of philosophy, because we brought that up with the title of your book a while back, or was that no, this was before we got on the air. I think we were talking about the name of your book. But I mean, I was a philosopher as an undergrad, and then did so much philosophy for my PhD. And so I have never met a complicated philosophical knot that I didn't want to approach and try to figure out. So.
Well, in addition to all these naughty topics, this book is also a little bit of a love letter to Rhode Island. Why did you want to set a story in Rhode Island?
Because I set all my stories in Rhode Island because I grew up there and I love it. And I will always love it. Even as it also breaks my heart because my family is no longer with me, and I feel like they're so alive in Rhode Island for me on the beach. But I also, maybe this is a good time for me to mention that I'm super excited to announce or to say that I'm going to, it turns out Her One Regret is going to be the first book in a series of thrillers, all set in Rhode Island. And the next one, I think, will be out next November. We're still working on the title. We have many titles. I have titles I prefer. The press we're debating. But all the books will feature multiple points of view. But Diana, the retired detective in Her One Regret, will be the point of view that carries through all of the books. And the next book goes back to her beginning. And it's set in the 1970s in Bonnet Shores, Rhode Island. And it is the reason what happens in that book is the reason she becomes a detective. And it was really fun to set a book. I mean, the next book is really set in my stomping grounds as a kid, where I grew up, like in the woods where I played and in the beach where my family went in the summers. And so like every street, every tree is a place that was a part of my life growing up. And so I'm super excited to set a whole series of books in my home state and my hometown.
Yay.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I can't wait. I can't wait for the next one. We have some audience questions. So one of our audience members wants to know, what are you reading now? Are you able to read a book while you're launching a book?
It's funny. It's a little bit hard. It's been very distracting, but I'm reading a book I totally love. It's called The Ministry of Time. And the author's name is failing me right now. But I kept seeing it around Barcelona, and it is absolutely beautifully written, totally delightful. It's making me laugh, and I can't put it down. And so, highly recommend. So that is one of the things that's what I'm reading right now, and I look forward to it every morning.
The author is Kellyanne Bradley.
Yeah, I think she's in the UK, maybe.
Okay.
And I just really love it, and I'm in the middle of it, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I have theories.
Okay. We put a link below so people can check it out. And then, we're also putting links below to Donna's novels. You can pick them up at your local independent bookstore or through bookshop.org, and we'll put that link below. And then another question that came in: how do you come up with the names of your characters? I love that question. I'm always so curious. How does that come to be?
That's such a loaded question for me. I think that's such a great question. I am really bad at naming my characters. What I usually do is I use the names of everyone I know. And then I just kind of sometimes I have to change the names before the book comes out, because sometimes I'll use the name of a person I don't love. And then I'll be like, oh, I should probably change that name. But for example, I shouldn't say this. Well, no, she won't see this, because she'd only watch this if it was in Catalan. But Diana actually comes from the name of the cheesemonger down the street, just down here. So, because I was talking to her, we were having a long conversation about cheese. And then I'm always talking to her because I'm always in her cheese shop. And she's very strong opinions about cheese. And I came upstairs and I was working on the book, and I was started putting Diana's character into the book, and I called her Diana because I had just been talking to Diana. So, but if I told her that, she'll get a big head about it, because she'll be like, you're writing a whole series about me, the cheesemonger detective. But Rose, though, Rose Napolitano, that's kind of an interesting one for me. So Rose, I took from, so I also wrote YA novels in my life. And one of the characters I most loved writing in one of my YA novels, which is called The Survival Kit, is named Rose. And when I started writing The 9 Lives of Rose Napolitano, I just imagined her grown up, that this is Rose grown up. So that felt meaningful to me. Yeah. But Napolitano is an homage to Elena Ferrante, the Neapolitan Quartet.
Yeah.
Because I love those books, and I had read them, and I felt like they gave me courage, I think, to write about complicated women.
Yeah.
Because I write about complicated women. I'm a complicated woman. And I felt empowered to do so because of those books. And so Napolitano is an homage to her. So I don't know. I think a lot of times, Kimberly, you're going to end up in my book at some point. I'm sure there's going to be Kimberly.
I hope I'm taller. Can you make me just a little bit taller? A little bit taller.
I use all my ex-boyfriends' names. It's really bad.
I read obituaries.
That's a good idea.
I read obituaries, and also because I'm fascinated by people's stories, and obituaries sometimes have great stories.
Ew.
And so that's one place where I don't necessarily read an obituary for someone and steal their name verbatim, but if it's a good last name, because I think last names can be really tricky.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I do is I have kids who are often performing in musical ensembles, and so I'll read the listing of all the kids' names. And
That's good.
again, for last names, because I find last names really, really tricky. Because like everybody's last name can't be like O'Malley, like you have to some variety. But
I also think I give my characters names that I wish were my name.
Yeah.
Like names that I think are beautiful.
Yeah.
But that they're not my name, but I give them to my protagonist. So like I love the name Olivia, and Olivia is one of the names that I gave to a protagonist one. So like stuff like that, I feel like that's another way I get them. But that's such a good question.
We're coming up to the end of our time, though, of course, I could talk with you forever. I wanted to just ask as a closing question, what do you hope readers take from this book? So they get to the last page and they close the cover on your gorgeous book. What do you hope, what's the feeling or the thought that you leave them with?
I hope they feel satisfied with the story. And I hope they feel spoken for in some way. I know maybe some people will be angry or upset because of the subject matter or disappointed, or I don't know, you know how it is with books, but I think satisfied and seen in some way in the book. I felt that about Rose, that I wanted that book to be for many different kinds of women. I dedicated that book to women's choices because I think that book is really about choice and our right to choose our lives and what we want. And I hope the same thing for this book in a lot of ways. And maybe I will read one thing. I have my book of the month copy actually here, which is very exciting. You have the non-book of the month copy. It's so fun to, I like the way they do the little
Yeah.
But there's an epigraph in the book from Orna Donath, who's a scholar, and it's from her book that's called Regretting Motherhood. And she says, something is still profoundly missing from our public discourse about motherhood. Something still waits to be said, as if on the tip of the tongue. And I kind of hope readers walk away and think something was said that we hadn't been saying. Yeah. So
thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for this wonderful conversation. It's so fun to get to talk to you, Kimberly. I'm really honored to get to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
I am delighted to spend time with you and talk about your wonderful book. And again, link is below. Please go pick it up if you haven't already. I know when I posted to Instagram that we were talking today, I had a friend comment, I just started reading this book, not knowing that we were friends and that we were talking today. So I love books that inspire conversation. And I know that's happened for me after reading Her One Regret, and I hope it does for our audience members as well. Thank you also to Karen, who is behind the scenes, making everything so easy and works so well on the tech side. To our audience, if you liked today's show, and I certainly hope that you did, please subscribe to A Mighty Blaze's page on Facebook to get notified of all of our other events, or hop over to amightyblaze.com to subscribe to our newsletter. Join A Mighty Blaze back next time for more interviews, not necessarily hosted by me, but maybe I'll be back again soon. It was a real pleasure to be here today. And until we meet again, be well and keep reading. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.